Hi, and welcome to the Letter S podcast. My name is Joe Gross, and I'm joined by Anina Jasper Brody, who, like myself, experienced the loss of a parent at a young age. In this series, Anina and I will be sitting down with individuals from all ages and backgrounds, each having experienced the loss of a parent. Join us as we delve into their unique journeys, exploring how they've navigated challenges and found motivation to lead positive, meaningful lives. Together, we'll uncover inspiring stories and valuable insights that can enrich our own paths. I invite you to join us on our journey to spread awareness and hope to those seeking a community and happiness in their lives. Hi, everyone, and welcome back today to yet another exciting episode of the Letter S podcast. I'm joined again by my amazing co-host, Anina. How are you today, Anina?
Hi, everyone. I'm good. Joe, thank God. How are you?
Thank God everything's good. And today we're here with Eric. How are you today, Eric?
Doing well, thank you very much.
Very happy to be here, especially coming all the way from Jersey. I know how that feels.
It's a big schlep.
Thank you, Eric, for making the shot for us.
Oh, the flight was great.
So Eric Kuperman here today. He was born and he grew up in Riverdale, actually. And then later on in his life, he moved on to New Milford, New Jersey, where he's now 52 years old, living with his amazing wife and 3 kids. Living the life, living the dream.
The amazing wife and 3 kids was fine, but I think the 52 years old was totally unnecessary and uncalled for.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That wasn't in my, hands. But if it was, I would do something about it.
Understood.
Eric was 3.5 years old when his father passed away from cancer, and he also had a couple other significant people in his life that he lost to, which we'll get to also. He's an attorney in the business world, and he is a huge sports fan and loves to play sports, including basketball, and loves watching anything virtually too. And he is very big on violin, as he played it for 8 years and loves to sing, as that makes sense, and daven for his shul. What got you into going into music? I mean, I love music. I'm a little bit of a DJ myself, but I've always wanted to learn about the piano because I think it's just an amazing instrument. So what got you to get into that? And then it sounds like you're a little bit of a cantor yourself too.
Yes, I fashion myself as a Baal Tefillah. I daven a lot for Romer, or its formal name is Keter Torah in Teaneck. When I was a kid, I was always very musical. My father's side of the family is very musical. My mother's side of the family, not so much. And my mother really encouraged me when I was a kid to sing. I was in choirs, and at some point, I remember as a kid going with her to JCC of some sort. And what instrument are you interested in? And I actually said the violin. I don't know why I said the violin, but that turned into 8 to 9 years of violin playing with lessons. And at some point, I fiddled around on the piano as well, and I continue to play the piano today. Not well enough to play in a band, but well enough to entertain my family I shouldn't say my family because they'll eye roll me. But yeah, I fiddle around on the piano. I no longer play the violin, although every now and then I'm tempted to pick it up again.
Right. Do you have a favorite song that you play on the piano?
So when I played the violin, I read music very well. But like any other language, it's use it or lose it. So I've really lost it. I can read it slowly now. And so everything I play on the piano, I play by ear. So if I hear something on the radio, I'll mess around with. Billy Joel just came out. I'm a big Billy Joel fan. So the answer is yes, any Billy Joel song, although I can't play any Billy Joel song. Parentheses, Angry Young Man. I don't know if you know the song. I'm sure you do. That's not for me. I love the song, can't play it, but he just came out with this new song recently. So as soon as that came out, I started fiddling around with it, and I just realized I'm using fiddling around. I play the violin, but I'm talking about the piano. So I taught myself to play that on the piano.
Does playing the violin, did it hurt your neck ever?
No.
Okay.
No, but I will tell you, it did cause, you probably can't see this on the video, but both of my pinkies, I cannot straighten I mean, I can straighten them. I can force it straight. It doesn't hurt, but it's sort of naturally curved or unnaturally curved from holding the violin and the bow for so many years. Just
Fun fact.
Wow.
fun fact about me.
That is pinkies.
Yeah.
So this podcast is called The Letter S.
Yeah.
The letter S for the letter S at the end of the word parents is when you lose a parent, the word parents turns into parent. So you were 3.5 when your father passed away. So I feel like it's safe to say that that was the majority of your life, and what you remember is without your father. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's interesting. Somebody actually just asked me yesterday whether I have any memories of my father. Tough to say, right? What does one remember from when he or she was 3.5 years old?
Right.
So I have certain snapshots in my mind. I don't know if those are created memories, perceived memories, actual memories. I don't know. Obviously I grew up solo with my mom, and so she was extraordinary in getting, in telling me things about my father and stories about my father, and so I'm sure those stories and messages over the years created memories, we'll call them, and pictures that I've seen and pictures that I have.
And what was it like growing up without that extra S, throughout your schooling and meeting new people? When someone says to you, your parents or your mom and dad, does this hit a certain place in your mind? What is that like?
So it's interesting. For me, it was normal,
Right.
right? It was the only thing I knew. I never, as by the time I was 10, let's say, I had a mom, and everybody in my world knew that my father had died when I was a little kid. Everyone. I mean, every teacher, every friend, the Rabbi Weiss, who you grew up with also. Everybody knew that I was, it was me and my mother, and my grandparents also lived in Riverdale, who you may have met my grandmother,
Yeah.
Shirley, right? Or as I don't know who's going to be listening to this eventually, but those who know Oma, Shirley Weil. So I grew up very close to my grandparents, Oma and Opa, Joe Weil, who died when I was in college. But like the entire community really um, circled around us and me in particular. And it really wasn't, I didn't have there was no moment where, oh, yesterday I had two parents, today I have one parent. It was my life as I know it was a one parent life until I was older, and we can get into that.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you remember anything from how the cancer process went? Like, do you remember when your father was diagnosed? Like anything
No, nothing.
except when people tell you things, and that kind of shapes some sort of memory a little bit, which is very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Listen again. At 3.5, I can tell you this. I can't say with 100% certainty, but I'm almost 100% certain I was not at my father's funeral, because it's unnecessary,
Right.
and it would have taken away. Like, obviously, this was a very young man. He was 32 years old, and otherwise in the prime of his young life, professionally, as a parent, as a spouse, um, who big in the community, and so it was shocking at the time, and it wasn't a place for a 3.5-year-old. So I believe, and my mother would confirm it if she were here, that I was with a babysitter somewhere, because I certainly wouldn't have understood the gravity
Right.
of the moment, and would have been it would have been inappropriate for me to be there.
Do you have any special memories that people have told you that really resonate with you, and how you feel like when people ask you, a little bit about your father, or someone brings it up, that you can tell them a sort of story that you have about him that people maybe tell you?
A particular story, probably not. There are a few things that are poignant to me, and I think right now it's topical with the Olympics. So I was about to say I'm an athletic guy. I used to be an athletic guy.
I think you
I,
still are.
yeah, yeah.
If you're, I mean, I'm interested. If you want to play basketball after, I got a hoop here. I'd
All
be
right, we'll
interested
see.
after
We'll
we're
see.
done.
I'm dressed more appropriately for basketball than you are, but we'll see. So I grew up playing everything, everything. I played baseball. I played football. I played well, no, not hockey. Hockey wasn't as big when I was a kid. Hockey's big, like for you guys. But I played everything. My father, I understand from to your question, was a big gymnast, and so did uneven parallel bars, and rings, and it's so I watched the Olympics.
Wow.
And we were watching last night, as a matter of fact, after Shabbos, and I watched some of that, and I try to think what might have been, like
Yeah.
did he really do all this stuff that I'm watching? It's like crazy.
Yeah, that's
I
very
can't,
cool.
like I'm 6'4". My father was 5'10". Um, I cannot imagine doing any of that stuff. I'm told he did it all.
It's so cool.
So that's one thing I think about. He who also very significant to me. He was a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer. He was a CPA. I'm not a CPA, but he practiced as a CPA. His practice was with his father-in-law. So my maternal grandfather and my father were partners. To me, that's unusual. You hear father-son, mother-daughter, mother-son, mother, those, but in-law relationships to have a business practice together, of course, it's out there. It's just less common, I think, and I think it was a tribute to to who he was and his
Right.
relationship with his in-laws, my maternal grandparents, and so that's another thing. He was also a musical guy. He played the guitar and the violin. Wrong, I played the violin, guitar and the piano. That's why we have a piano. We still have the piano in our house now that my father played in the apartment where I grew up.
Wow.
Very cool. What is that like? I mean, you mentioned you still play piano. So what is that like playing piano from the same piano that your father played from?
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, sounds
It's
cool.
it's cool. So that's a part of me. Like one of you'll see, God willing, someday you'll be older. You'll have families of your own.
I mean,
We have
Man.
I mean, yeah. So we have, one of the challah boards in our house is the challah board that my parents, my mother and father, were given as either an engagement or a wedding gift. So every time we use that, I have Kiddush cups that I use now that were my father's. That stuff happens all the time, and I've just become so accustomed to it that it doesn't even register when I take out the challah board. I just take out the challah board, but it's certainly significant. If it weren't significant, a challah board from I don't know 40 years ago or so, 35 years ago, would have been discarded or replaced.
right.
Right. And for special occasions, I have a similar opportunity too that I always take upon. I use my father's talus for certain times, and that's very special for me. I definitely feel a little more emotion when I do wear it. It feels very special, and I really like when I have those certain times where I'm having a maid in my house and I need a talus, or for my bar mitzvah, having that talus around is makes me feel it feels very special to wear it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It's a big deal to perpetuate the memory of the past using some physical manifestation in the present, and that's good. You should continue to wear it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have gone through life and you're married now with 3 kids. What was it like going through those pivotal moments in your life without your father by your side? Did that ever come to your memory when of your wedding day and having your first kid?
Yeah, of course. And I'll just add to you, we not only have 3 kids, we have a fourth kid because our son is married. So
Mazel tov.
so
So you're really with
you
the
know,
whole yeah. So you're really with the whole in-laws thing with the with the grandfather, the business of the attorney business. and with having a fourth kid. So would you say that you feel, I guess a different question before that one, but you feel more close that you can get with your in-laws or your now daughter-in-law because you went through so much and you feel tight knit, is very mandatory, and you feel a lot more because you've lost someone so crucial in your life that you feel like that's something that's important to your life.
100%. Yeah, it's critical in my psyche.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was brought up very close to my maternal grandparents in Riverdale, and my mother was very specific with making sure that I was close with my paternal grandparents, with whom technically, right, she wasn't related anymore, but they lived in Queens, Forest Hills, um, and she made sure that that happened. As far as milestones in my life, which have been impactful because my father's gone, yeah, that happens, continues to happen all the time. Um, even just aging, right? I remember when I remember being a kid and saying, "Wow, in the year 2000, I'm going to be 28 years old. That's crazy. That's so far away." Well, as you will see as you get older, it's not that far away.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah, it goes pretty quickly. But I can remember being in my 20s, knowing that my father died at 32, and thinking, that's not so far away. And then suddenly I was 30, and then I turned 32, and it was really unfathomable to me. I was, recently married. Um, we had, I mean, a few years before that, and I was now a father, and 32, I felt like a baby. I mean, I still feel like a baby. I'm 52 now, but I felt, I don't know, I was so young, and it was unfathomable to me at that moment that an otherwise healthy, athletic, strong, vibrant, passionate human being could be reduced to you know a withering away soul and ultimately die. It was unfathomable. So when I passed 32, that was strange for me. Now that I'm in my 50s, it's with a married kid of my own. Um, it's strange. It's strange.
Did you have a moment growing up where you realized that your father passed away? Because when you were 3.5, of course, you don't remember. Do you know of a moment where you're like, oh, like my father passed away and I'm with my mom and only my mom?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know. I'm gonna say no. Uh, there may have been. I mean, I may have been, 7, 8, 9, and it may have occurred to me. But right now, thinking back, all I can remember is growing up, with my mom. Uh, I do not remember. It's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to. I'll have to think about that some more. We can have a follow up someday. But I don't think so. I don't think so.
It's just interesting because I obviously remember being told that my father passed away and I was 8. So obviously I remember that time, not a lot, but some things. So I remember that moment, but I'm sure like 3 and you weren't even at the funeral. So that's
Right. Right.
very interesting.
I sadly I wasn't even at the funeral of your father, even though I remember very well when
I
he
really
passed
thought you
away.
were there.
I wasn't there, and
Oh.
I'll tell you why I wasn't there. We were in Florida because it was Pesach,
Mm.
and we got the word. Oof. Even it's so funny. We're talking about my father, but I'm remembering your father, and that was tough.
Yeah.
Well, I think that brings up a good point to make. How do you feel interacting with people who go through something like that
Yeah.
too? Because you resonate with it so much.
It's interesting. I feel rightly or wrongly, and there probably isn't a right or wrong, but I feel a kinship. Um, Sort of like this club, uh, which is a terrible club to be in, but it's a club that at some point everybody's going to be in. God willing, in the ordinary course of events,
Yes.
everybody will, unfortunately, at some point, bury their parents.
Right.
And it's terrible to have it the reverse. But I feel a kinship with those who have, and a particular softness or sensitivity when it's a child. Um, you know, obviously, as I've gotten older, my friends and colleagues have gotten older, and that's part of life. You know, people's parents die, and you know, I've had several close friends, or many close friends at this point, who have lost parents. You know, I'm close with them, and I try to do as much as I can. But it's different when a child or a young even a teenager or a young adult loses a parent, and I find that obviously when I have no connection, I have no connection. But when I'm connected to the family in some capacity, um, like yours, and frankly like yours, Joe, because I knew your dad as well. Um, I feel a kinship. I think, and I don't look to give advice or whatever because everybody feels what they feel, but I certainly feel connected, um, and I feel like if there are questions to be asked, not necessarily on a podcast, I try to make myself available.
Right. And you feel that you have a strong connection to going to a Shiva house for, a friend that lost a parent. You feel that you can make a huge impact on their lives by just being there or throughout the process.
Yeah, I try. I try my very best to be, unless I'm out of town for whatever reason.
Florida.
Florida, in that case. But we made it back for the Shiva and the Shloshim. Um, but I try my very best to pay Shiva visits when I can. Of course, the closer the relationship, the more I go.
Right.
Minyanim, etc. But yeah, they're not. I don't find Shiva houses uncomfortable. Some people do. I find it. I find it therapeutic. I find it therapeutic. Listen. I can't say what it is for somebody else who's sitting Shiva, but I think the process is a therapeutic one.
Yes.
I think we the Jews built in a good system to death and mourning, where the community really rallies around and helps to carry the Avel or the Avelim through a very difficult time.
Yeah, I think that it's very special what our culture, our religion, like Judaism does, because I even remember, like, don't remember a lot, but I remember, like, the Shiva experience and having my friends there, having community there. My mom had people around her, like, thank God. And I think that in other cultures and religions, that's not the norm. They don't sit Shiva for a week. And I think that sometimes it's very uncomfortable when you're in the situation. I mean, I wasn't uncomfortable, but I can imagine for older people it might be uncomfortable. But I think that it's very important that people have that support system right away and they're not by themselves.
100%. I think I'm a bit of a unique case study because I didn't technically sit Shiva because I was so young. But it seems to me that the toughest part after losing whomever you've lost is the post Shiva period, right? The community goes away, life resumes to normal for the rest of the world, but it's certainly not normal for the person sitting Shiva. And that's when the really close knit circle of friends I will say, has to, they must, it is their obligation to maintain the support system for those who just got up from sitting Shiva.
Yeah. So you mentioned how your mother got remarried, right?
She did.
So can you speak a little bit about that? Tell us a little, how old were you, what that relationship was with your stepfather? Because my mom just got engaged, as we all know, and Joe's mom
Mazel tov.
is remarried. So I think that a lot of people that come on to thank you for the mazel tov, by the way. I think that people that come onto the podcast, not everyone's parents are remarried. So can you speak a little bit about your experience?
First of all, I'll comment on your mom getting engaged because I know Jeff. Do you know Jeff?
I met him today. He's also like 6'4".
He's a big dude. I wouldn't want to tussle with Jeff, but
Yeah.
Either.
he's
Me neither.
a gentle giant. He's a teddy bear of a guy, and Heidi and I and my kids have known Jeff for a number of years as well, and he's a sweetheart of a guy.
That's for you, Jeff.
And your mom, yeah, that's for you, Jeff. But that's not. I'm not saying that because we're being recorded. I'm saying it because it's true. We
won't tell him.
We just went out to dinner the other night with your mom, with Michelle and Jeff, and one other couple, another Michelle and David. Shout out to Michelle and David. That was actually. I'll answer your question, Onion, I promise. But Michelle and David, Jasper Brody, and Michelle and David Levine, that was part of the fun when we were in Riverdale because we had two Michelles and two Davids with whom we were extraordinarily close and with whom we remain extraordinarily close, and we're glad to bring Jeff into that chevra.
Very nice.
As
Very
for my
nice.
mom, yeah, she got married in 1994 for the first time since my father had died. It was just shy of my 22nd birthday. And unfortunately, the marriage was wonderful. And unfortunately, my stepfather, her husband, died recently. In any event, he was an amazing human being. We were close.
So you were 22 when they got married?
Just shy of my 22nd birthday. I was in college. They got married in March of 1994. My birthday's in May. Yeah, I was graduating college, and it was a great marriage. They were wonderful together. They actually knew each other from their childhood. His first wife, Lana, and Lee was his name. So Lana and Lee had three daughters, my stepsisters. They all have husbands. They all have children. One of them is married. Another one just got engaged. They're children, I mean. We're all very close. We remain close. I treated Lee like he was my father. You know, he was a father figure in my life since 1994 until about a little under 2 years ago. It was different for my stepsisters and my mom because their mother had, and I knew their mother also, a wonderful, really wonderful woman who also unfortunately got sick, and they remarried a few years after she died. They married each other. So for me, it was different. It had to be different, and we never really discussed outright what it was like for them, what it was like for me. But I would imagine that it was different. It was different. My father died when I was 3.5, and they were getting married when I was not quite 22. Their mother died a few years before. They were all
older
adults, young adults. And so it presented different challenges, to me and to them. But I'm happy to say that 25 years later, the three of them and I and their husbands and their children and my wife and our children remain close, and we're very close, and they continue to treat my mother very respectfully and lovingly.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. All of that, you guys are all close. Now, just backing track a little bit, was it easy adapting to having a new father and going throughout that whole process? Like, he really felt like family, like when your stepfather came in and you had some type of good relationship from the start, or was it a little bit difficult in the beginning because it was a lot to process?
I will tell you that when they got engaged, I said to my mother that I thought it would be appropriate if I took him out for dinner. And so this 21-year-old pisher took out this, I don't know how old he was at the time. I took him out to dinner. I remember where I took him out to dinner. I remember sitting at him and speaking. And the answer to your question is no. We were. It wasn't uncomfortable for me. It was good for me. It was good for me. My mother had, you know, a husband, as you know, men should have wives, women should have husbands, and it was good for her. She spent a lot of years taking care of me, and it was good for her to be married.
Yeah.
It's really nice that you could speak like that because personally, I've had a little bit of a hard time.
I understand that.
Yeah, but I also obviously want my mom to be happy and I don't want her to be alone. And as I like grow up and get married, God willing, soon, and and have children, I don't want my mom to be alone. And so I have to constantly remind myself of that. So the fact that you're like women should be married and men should be married, like that's a very important value, and we want what's best for our
Yeah, it's a natural. I think it's a natural thing. Is you know, the younger one is to say, "Oh, that's my parent." You know, I wanna hold on and whatever. But the truth is, we're all human beings, and human beings uh, need companionship, and I think it's important, and it is important for your mom.
Yes, it is. Even though she's a psychologist, she wanted me to say that.
Of course.
She is. By the way, I've spoken to her on the regular.
She's great.
So was she someone in your life that's kind of helped you throughout the process?
Oh.
Like you speak to,
No.
like about psychology, or is there someone specifically throughout the years that you've gone through like as a mentor or as a psychologist?
No, so I've never spoken to a psychologist professionally, um, but certainly Michelle, I mean, his mom and I have spoken numerous times during her dad's illness, before, you know, when he was in remission, after when it came back. Um, we've spoken about that. We spoke about my experiences. I did a lot of writing um, to David, to your dad when he was fighting, um, and I know that certainly wasn't the intent because I didn't know it would happen. They made it into a book, and I'm some of my letters to him, and I'm you know it's a lot of chizuk stuff to him and
Right.
to his kids, to their kids. You know, so yes, I've spoken with her a lot. None of it in a professional capacity. I've also not spoken to anybody outside of, you know, Michelle Jasper Brody in a professional capacity. But I have friends who, you know, close friends who know my history and who are willing to speak with me periodically. I don't, you know, I don't seek it out.
Right.
You know, Heidi's sitting over my right shoulder, knows pretty much all there is to know. But it certainly, you know, it comes up. It comes things happen in life, and yeah, watching your own kids get married, and your father's not there to watch that moment happen. And right, I'm going back to a question you asked me 20 minutes ago, and I forgot to completely answer it. I talked about when I turned 32. But yeah,
You have the floor.
when our son got married, huge deal. You know, my bar mitzvah, my kids' bar and batei mitzvah. Yeah, all those moments tend to bring back this feeling of incompleteness, I would say.
And what is that like for you? How does that feel? And are there things that you do during that moment where you feel the incompleteness that help you cope, I guess?
I cry.
Yeah, that's really important.
That's it.
Crying's important.
Yeah, we were watching the video of our kid's wedding, of our son's wedding. And my son now makes fun of me. He's like, "You cry on everything." I'm like, yeah, I do. It's all right. I'm okay with it. Funny story. When at my bar mitzvah, my mother was giving a speech, and to me at the time, it was the most humiliating thing to have a parent cry. So she's speaking at the party. Right? There's a party, and I have all my friends there. Who doesn't want to be the coolest kid, right? So I'm the coolest kid, of course. And I'm standing next to my mother, and I can hear her voice start to get shaky, and I go like this, and under my hand, I say, "Don't cry." and and then at my son's bar mitzvah, of course, I'm speaking, and the first of many episodes of being choked up happen, and my mother's sitting in the front row watching this happen, and I say to her, "Yes, I remember at my bar mitzvah telling you not to cry, and payback is brutal. I'll clean it up for the purposes of the podcast, but it was the same experience. So, those moments are emotional for me."
Right. And your mother at the time when you were speaking also went under her breath and said, "Don't cry," right?
She may well have, although probably not. She probably was thinking, "See, not so easy, is it?" But we got through it.
What is your relationship with God like? Have you ever had moments where you were angry at Hashem? Can you speak a little bit about that and where you're holding with that now?
Of course, yeah, I have. I still do. I still do. Um, there are a lot of moments in life. Look, as some who know me well might be able to testify. Well, I think I'm a pretty thorough thinker. I'm not the most decisive individual on the planet. It takes me a long time to decide, this or that. Um, Part of that is genetic. I know because I know my mother well, and I knew my grandmother well. But I think some of it is not having had a father, and sometimes there are things where I'm like, I don't even like. What would my father have done? I don't know. I was 3.5. I have no idea what he would have thought, what he would have said, what he would have done. Um, so in those moments, I'm frustrated. It is what it is. I don't think I would characterize myself as angry, but frustrated. Yeah, I do. So we mentioned I'm about tefillah. I daven a lot Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. When I started doing that, excuse me. When I started doing that um, many years ago, um, that was challenging. There are certain parts of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur davening which are very personal, and unless you're a Baal Tefillah or a Chazan, you've never experienced saying these very personal piyutim or parts of tefillah which you're saying out loud for the benefit of the kahila to try to elevate the kahila while at the same time having this internal struggle. So, yeah, there have been teary moments then also, and it's hard. I still, I'm davening Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, God willing, this year as well. And every year it's different. It's not like I get to one piece of davening and I'm like, oh, this gets me every time. It doesn't get me every time. And sometimes I wonder in the moment, why am I not, I don't know, why is this not forcing something? And then some other part of davening, which I've been fine with in years past, gets me. I can't explain it. But those moments you asked about a religious or spiritual um, consequence or result or effect, yeah, I do have those. At the cemetery, I have them. When I go to visit my father, shamefully, not enough as I should. Um, we all get busy and distracted, and it's important not to be distracted. Because it's important to maintain the connection from the past and transmit it and carry it with you into the future.
I feel like a lot of people, I don't know, I feel like everyone has a different relationship with cemetery, but I know that I feel like people say I don't go enough. And because I get busy, this isn't to make anyone feel bad, but to like acknowledge that it's also maybe a difficult thing to do. And I don't know, I just feel like sometimes we say like, "Oh, it's far" or whatever, but also we can let ourselves know that like it is a hard thing to do. I don't know. I feel very connected, but my mom and my brother don't, and therefore I don't drive well, so I don't go a lot. And I wish I could, but also I have two other people in my family who don't like going, and they're my way to get there. So
Yeah.
we make do with what works.
Right. Right. Yeah, listen, everybody reacts differently, and you certainly can't mandate a mourning process on anybody else. It's a very personal thing. Um, and I understand it. I understand both. I understand the need to go, and I understand the desire not to so much.
What is Yisker like for you? Because I feel like sometimes they say try to connect with that person, bring up a memory, and because you were so young, is that how does that feel for you? Also, when people ask questions like, "Oh, do you remember anything about him?" Is that annoying? How do you feel towards that?
Certainly not annoying. I appreciate. I'm answering the questions in reverse. I appreciate the question. I really do. If it comes from an older person who knew my father, then I take it as this almost like a hey, I knew your dad, and you're doing okay, and I remember him and may tell me a story or two. If it comes from somebody who's my age or younger, I just take it as a curiosity, and maybe they've been through the circumstance more recently, and they want to see what time does. And time is, cliche, but time is a healer. It's not an eraser. It's not an eraser, but it's a healer. Time does
100% agree with that.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
As for Yisker, interesting question. Also, it's become a little bit of a thing in my community. So I'm the Yisker guy. That's a dubious distinction. Right? Nobody grows up going, I want to be the Yisker guy.
Sure not.
So I have become um, one of one of the few people in our shul who does Yisker for the shul. Also, strange. It's strange to do what is a very, again, same thing I said about Rosh Hashanah and Kippur davening. It's a personal tefillah, which, I mean, shul's empty, right? Because people, thank God, who don't have to say Yisker, they
Yeah.
leave the shul and they leave the rest of us in there, and you're suddenly in this very quiet, personal space. But the Baal Tefillah's job is to connect the personal, but it becomes impersonal for him. So it's strange. It's challenging. I will say the first time, or the first two times I led Yisker for the shul, I found it very difficult. Um, just hard to compartmentalize um, what was happening. I will tell you, after my stepfather died, I did Yisker, um, and very tough. He died on Sukkot, so the funeral happened, but Shiva was postponed, and then there was Shmini Atzeret, and it was tough. It was very tough for me. Um, Obviously, because losing him was a big loss, and it conjured up other memories. And I can remember being in Romer and doing it, and having coming down. I usually come down, and whoever's davening most of, sometimes it's me davening most of, sometimes somebody else. But I remember coming down. I wasn't davening most of that day. I remember coming down, and if I'm not davening most of, normally, either I'll shake the rabbi's hand, or if he's out of the room, in one of the other minyanim, I'll go back to my seat. I did not move. I stood by the bima because I just needed to collect myself. I put my tallis over my head. Normally, I don't daven with my tallis over my head for a couple of reasons. Some practical, some personal, um, and I just stood there crying and trying to collect myself before I went back. So it's Yisker is challenging,
Yeah.
and it was challenging before I led it for the Kahila.
Right.
When I was a kid saying it, and I was like, I do not remember being in shul and not saying Yisker. As far as I'm concerned, I've said Yisker my entire life.
Right.
And I can remember being 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, 15, 17, being in a room predominantly occupied by adults, right? And older adults, where I was the kid and I felt like they were looking at me, oh, it's so terrible, this is a kid. Whether they were or they weren't. I remember thinking, I know I must look strange in this environment because I'm 14, or because I'm the only one who doesn't yet shave on the men's side, and yet I'm saying Yisker. So I do remember that.
It's really interesting because I feel like everyone we've had on the podcast has said that thing of I always feel like I'm the youngest and everyone's looking at me. Why are you in here? I don't know. I kind of feel like I don't really remember life before saying Isker. Like I don't. I think that it's funny when everyone leaves. It's like, oh, like everyone's partying outside, and I'm in here saying Yisker for my parent or my sibling. And I think that a little bit it should be like there should be some type of change because it's very odd. Like in Harova last year, they had a thing where everyone would stay. I don't know if they did this in Asia also, but everyone would stay in, and then everyone who had parents alive had like this tefillah for people who had parents alive, and the rabbi said everyone who's fortunate enough to have parents alive, you're going to say this. And then I was actually handed one. I was like, oh, like, not for me. Like, I made a joke out of it. But I think that's a really nice way to do it. I think I don't know, I feel weird when everyone leaves and I'm like in shul. I think it's strange. I don't know.
So when I can remember being in my early 20s, and the West Side was a thing for people in college and in graduate school for Yontif, right? So Shmini Atzeret, Simchas Torah in particular. So you say Yisker then, and I can remember going to OZ, where Rabbi Schwartz is still the rabbi to this day, and it was the first place that I remember. I don't even think we did this in the HIR in Riverdale, but it was the first place that I could remember where Rabbi Schwartz said, for those who are not comfortable staying in, you're welcome to leave. But for those who are comfortable, even if you need not say Yisker, and they handed out cards with names of victims of the Holocaust so that you had somebody to say Yisker for who may well not have had anybody ever to say Yisker for them. And I thought that was amazing. Now, again, I say Yisker my whole life, so I took a card anyway. I said Yisker for who I had to say Yisker, and I also said Yisker for this person who had been killed. And I thought that was great. Today, um, I think, look, I even, again, I don't try to impose my values on anybody else, but I try to encourage, like you should stay in. If you don't have to say Yisker, thank God for anybody in your family. And you should certainly stay in for Holocaust victims,
Yeah.
for you know IDF members who have fallen, um, and some people do, and I try in my Yisker, I try to get people to emote and to feel. I don't just say it through. I incorporate soft, slow music into it. Um, because that's who I am personally, and that became that's really why it became a thing. Because the first time I did it, I remember doing it the first time Shavuos, and I even while I was getting up to, I don't sing the whole thing, but at the end I add in some music, and I was deciding as I was going through the Kalmale for the Shoah, am I going to do it? Am I not going to do it? Am I going to do it? Am I not? And at the end, I decided I'm doing it, and I did it. And afterwards, and I did it for the Shoah, and I did it for the Chayalim, and I got tremendously positive feedback afterwards. Like people said they had goosebumps, and they never heard anything like that. And to this day, I continue to do it, and it's been a positive experience
Yeah,
for
it
me and
sounds
for
like
them.
something very special. very important to have in shuls, having those special kelmales, and I think that's important for people to hear. As it's not just about our loved ones, but chayalim and people who have gone through the Holocaust. They're still a big part of our lives.
100%.
And throughout all of the challenges and all of the tragedy that you've been through in your life, do you think that difficulty in general does build character?
Yeah, I think so. I think in general it does. I certainly. I want to even address the wording of your question. I don't want it to sound like I've had this tough, difficult life that's overcome challenge after challenge after challenge. Yeah, my father died when I was a kid. Horrible, big, huge challenge that I continue to work at. Making hopefully as many right decisions as possible. Yeah, it's certainly there were certain challenges. My father was in a successful accounting practice with my grandfather. If that continued, could I have learned and come into the business and had a business set up for me? And yeah. So that's an example of one realistic, real world, challenge. But that being said, every time I succeed at whatever, whether it's a job or being a Baltfila or playing a sport, I don't think to myself, and this despite not having a father. Like that's not my psyche.
Right.
Yeah, I succeed or fail, and neither one do I blame on not having had a father since I was a kid.
I think that's a great mindset and a very important part of why we do this podcast, that you brought that up. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Sure.
And on top of that, all of the advice that you've given us and our listeners today has been truly incredible, and we thank you so much for that. Is there specifically, though, one huge piece of advice, one in particular, that you can leave us off with the listeners and us today? I know it's a tough question on the spot, but if there's anything you'd love to hear.
One piece of advice: hug your parents.
Yeah.
I think that's probably it. Because life is short. So love them while you got them, and love them after you don't got them anymore. I know that wasn't English, but poetic license. But listen, we all take things in life for granted. It's the human condition. We're taking for granted that we're sitting in a lovely room right now with microphones and audio equipment, and we're able to record a podcast on this very topic. But the truth is, yeah, your loved ones, you should not take them for granted, because life can change in an instant, and it's important to appreciate what you got.
Yeah, and as that relates to all of us, I think that's amazing to just hear. Just being able to hug, like, I should definitely hug my mom and my stepdad after this podcast, because we never know when anything can happen, and just like you showed in a snap of a second, your whole life can change. So take advantage of what you have right now, and I think that's a very important piece of advice and an amazing piece of advice that we could take today. So thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for coming across the GW today to join us for the podcast.
And
we
the
really appreciate
Whitestone
all that.
Bridge.
How do you know we took the Whitestone?
I took the Triborough.
Oh.
I know it's not called the Triborough anymore. What's it called? I don't know. I grew up, it was called the Triborough. Now it's called something else.
Is it the RFK?
Maybe it's the RFK.
You're just assuming you took the Whitestone.
Sorry.
But yes, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Eric, so much.
No problem.
Amazing.
Thank you again so much for listening to another episode of the Letter S podcast, inspiring one life at a time. Please make sure to check out our Instagram at the Letter S podcast _. If you have any questions or are interested in hopping on a mic with us, feel free to email us at theletterspodcast@gmail.com. And as always, stay in touch.